So folks, we'll jump straight into it. Basically, episode 1 of season 2 is all about medications, untold stories. So it's a kind of diary of my own personal experience of medication for mental health purposes. Alright? Just as a quick disclaimer, I'm not here trying to advise people on what medications to take and stuff like that. It's purely anecdotal experience, so I'm speaking from my own personal lived experiences of taking these types of medications and the side effects that have come with that for me personally. So I'm not here trying to dictate or be a substitute for your doctor for medical advice from your doctor, so always go to your doctor for medical advice. That being said, I have backed up, what I'm saying is going to be backed up with credible sources of information and references and things like that. So I'll be talking about things which are well documented in the public domain and things like that. So that's what I'll be talking about, guys. So, without further ado, I'll jump straight into it, guys. So, for me, my journey in terms of taking medication has been sort of long and arduous, really. I first started taking medication in 2011. At the time I was at university, I was depressed and things like that, sluggish, lethargic. I didn't really know what was going on at that time. Obviously I was depressed looking back. And the first medication I was prescribed by a GP there was citalopram. You might have heard of citalopram. Citalopram is an SSRI, so selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. That's not really that important, but I'm just saying that to illustrate that there's different classes of antidepressants. So there's SSRIs, SNRIs, tricyclics, atypical medications as well, and they all work in very similar but differential ways. You know, they affect the neurotransmitters in the brain, and they affect those particular chemicals, and they're all sort of selective in general. They sort of affect different pathways in the brain. So I was placed on citalopram at 20 milligrams, and that was slowly increased to about 40 to 50. It did help me. It made me feel very sort of wired, I guess, actually, very wired and very almost manic, actually. It gave me a bit of it made me feel mania, which is kind of elevated mood, high energy, you know, and that sort of thing. I'm not talking about bipolar here, by the way. I don't actually have bipolar, but what I'm using it as a way of sort of illustrating how it made me feel. It almost made me feel that way. And it works. It did make me feel a little bit spaced out. It worked for about 2 years and then it just stopped working, which is quite common, guys, actually. They do say that up to, for about 60% of the people, they do say that antidepressants do work for about 60% of the people, but that leaves about 40% roughly where antidepressants don't work. Now you might think that's really good, that's a really good statistic, guys, but the problem is 40% is still a large chunk of people. So what do you do with those people? Well, the answer is, I suppose, therapy. Therapy and medication is the gold standard for mental health in general, and that's a known fact. That's something that's out there in the public domain, that doctors and therapists have even told me, you know, verbatim, you know, that medication alone is not enough. You need therapy as well alongside that. So we had citalopram, taken that for about 2 years. It stopped working, and then I was on another medication called fluoxetine, which didn't help at all. I was on that for a mere month or two. Didn't really make a bit of difference at all, really. Same class of medication, SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So it in fact affects the serotonin in the brain. That's how it kind of works. And it's selective in that it affects just the serotonin in general, which is a feel-good chemical in the brain that, you know, affects your mood, regulates your mood and your emotions and all that sort of thing. So fluoxetine, didn't take that very much. And then I think the third medication that I tried, because I've tried a lot, guys, by the way, I tried up to about 7 or 8 now. The third medication that I tried was, oh God, bear with me, guys. The name escapes me, but it's sertraline, that's it. So sertraline, that's another SSRI that is commonly prescribed to people. Now that didn't really help me. It made me feel dizzy and made me feel nauseated and sick. It did make me feel very alert, and actually I was almost sort of too alert. Actually, I couldn't really switch off. And I was taking that on and off for about 2 years. Didn't really keep up with taking it that well. I wasn't very disciplined with taking medication, so that was a bit of a problem for me, taking the sertraline. And then I was put on to propranolol, which is a beta blocker, guys, commonly prescribed for people with high blood pressure and things like that. But obviously it's used off-label for anxiety and things. It lowers the blood pressure and slows the heart down and things like that. So it's used for people to lower your blood pressure, so it has a very sedative effects on people. So that it's used prescribed off-label for people with anxiety or people who have panic attacks. And I was prescribed that to take as and when I needed. And unfortunately, that didn't really help me. I actually ended up getting used to the medication, and it didn't really help in the end. And then I was switched to mirtazapine because I was having problems sleeping, guys. So, and that's well known to help you sleep. Mirtazapine is. So they prescribed me mirtazapine, and I was on that for probably about a year. But I started to develop paranoid ideas and paranoid delusions, guys, around smell and things like that. I actually developed the belief that I smelled and people didn't want me around and things like that. And even now I'm very hypervigilant and things like that. And it has caused a change in my behaviour, guys. It does make me not aggressive to people, but I'm very on guard and stuff like that. Very sensitive to rejection, very self-conscious. So from then, I was put on lefipramine, which is a different class of antidepressant. It's a SNRI, which is, it affects the serotonin and the noradrenaline in your brain. So it affects the adrenal glands, adrenaline glands, and the serotonin in your brain. Lefipramine did help me. It calmed me down, but I've quickly found that I was getting more and more angry on it. Angry at the state of the mental health services, basically, more than anything. So I ended up being switched on that again. I was increased initially. I can't remember the dosage, but I was increased, and then eventually I got switched again to duloxetine. And duloxetine's worked for me quite well. And at this point, we're on the sort of 7th or 6th medication now over the space of 10 years. Duloxetine helps me massively. It's prescribed for anxiety and depression, and also off-label for fibromyalgia and nerve pain and muscle pain. And this information is widely available. I'm not quoting, by the way, verbatim, rather. But you can find this information on the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, NICE. They're the NICE guidelines, you see. They're the people that decide on why a medication is prescribed, what it's prescribed for, and whether it can be prescribed off-label, what its indications are, etc. So you can go on their website and visit the British National Formulary, which is the kind of official guidance that GPs and health practitioners follow when they're prescribing medications. So after that, I was prescribed, obviously, I'd been prescribed 6 different types of antidepressants. Now, Now, obviously, the guidance is if you fail to respond to 2 or more antidepressants with your mental health, it can be augmented with an antipsychotic. Now, antipsychotics are not routinely for anxiety and depression, but they can be used for severe anxiety and depression, guys, if you fail to respond to 2 or more antidepressants. That's the NICE guidelines. It's widely available and widely known. Not widely known, rather. It's not commonly known by the public, but that's why I'm doing this podcast, so that people can make informed choices, guys, and they can look at the NICE guidelines themselves. It's available on the internet if you want to search for it. And so, basically, because of the paranoia and delusions that I'm having, guys, because it's been causing a lot of problems in my life, isolation and things like that, and got me really upset and things like that I do smell and stuff like that. I've seen, countless psychiatrists and psychologist guys. So I've now been put on an antipsychotic. And a lot of people, they get misinformed about it. And what I mean by antipsychotic is, I don't mean psychotic in the sense that someone's a raving lunatic and they're homicidal. People get their back up when they hear psychotic, because they think, oh, well, it means someone's dangerous. No, so antipsychotic, what that's referring to is something called psychosis, which is basically where someone loses contact with reality, guys, and they'll experience things like delusions, hallucinations, and there's a lot of different types of hallucinations you can experience. Auditory, you can hear voices; visual, you can see things; gustatory, that means you can sort of taste things; and olfactory, which is smell, so you can smell things, and you might think, well, I can smell certain smells and things like that. There's a lot of different variables as to what can cause hallucinations and delusions. There's a lot of different reasons why, you guys, And so I've been put on an antipsychotic called aripiprazole or Abilify. Started off on 5 milligram. That really helped to relax me a little bit, but I still found that I was very much agitated. So it's now being increased to 10 milligram. A lot of antipsychotics, they are licensed for psychosis, guys. So what I mean by that is they're licensed for people with either psychosis or schizophrenia or bipolar. So basically psychosis that occurs within schizophrenia and bipolar, because certain types of bipolar can experience psychotic breaks from reality. And same with schizophrenia. And actually you can experience psychosis under extreme stress and things like that as well. It's not black and white, guys, basically. There's a lot of guidance and research out there and medical papers if you want to have a look, but I won't get into it too much on here because I'm not a doctor, but obviously I have used credible sources of information to get to bring this episode together. It's in a PowerPoint and I'll include that in the episode description, and if you want I'll post it on Facebook so you can all see that I've quoted from reputable sources of information. A lot of this is synthesised information from my own knowledge, guys. So I've someone that suffered from mental health issues for like at least 15 years. I do have a lot of experience and knowledge about this. So a lot of it is coming from my own knowledge that I've read up on over the years, but also I've included credible sources of information just so you guys are reassured that I've read around the subject as well. So I'm on an antipsychotic right now, which does help. It does help me. It's not a cure at all, and I'm also in therapy as well with a psychologist, and I have a therapist, a psychotherapist, privately that I see sporadically every month, and it all really sort of helps. It's not the be-all end-all. It's not something that's going to solve all my problems, but it does help. So that's kind of it, guys, really. It's just a short episode on my journey in terms of medication and stuff. I've left a lot of things out, but guys, that's kind of an overview of psychosis. I've given you a very, very brief overview of psychosis and my journey in terms of medication. There's a lot of different types of medication, different types of classes, as I've mentioned. You'll find those in the description, episode description. I'll leave links if you want to find out more about those. I've talked about selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. I've talked about SNRIs, tricyclics, and atypical antidepressants. With antipsychotics, there's two different classes, guys, atypical and typical antipsychotics. The typical ones were founded or discovered a lot earlier than the atypical ones. I currently take an atypical antipsychotic, and the reason for that is I think it's because of minimal side effects. It's been tested and trialled much more, and they've been found to be less harmful and less addictive than atypical ones, which were founded a lot earlier. They tend to stay away from those unless you've failure to respond to two or more. I think it's two or more. I might be wrong about this part. If you've failed to respond to, again, one or more atypical antipsychotics, they might try you on the typical ones. Some examples of atypical antipsychotics are clozapine, olanzapine, aripiprazole, which I'm on, quetiapine, risperidone, and there's quite a few others, actually. I don't know all of them. They're like the main 3 or 4 that you can be prescribed. Typical ones are haloperidol, clomipramazine, and there's a few others, but that's just a list of ones, basically. So that's it, guys, really. So I've given you a brief overview of my medication journey and the different types of medications that are taken, and I've given you an overview of the different types that are available. If you guys have any stories, any medication stories that might help some of our listeners, please feel free to like, comment, share and subscribe across all our channels. And maybe you might want to come on the podcast. Give me an email at our email address. You can find that on our Facebook or on any of our channels, guys. So that's everything, guys. What I'll do now, this is just a general sort of story of my medication journey. I might do some individual episodes about individual medication. I'm not sure yet, but this is just an overview of my medication journey, guys, and what it's been like for me over the past 10 years. So, without further ado, you guys take care, and remember, always, always, always seek the medical professional advice of your GP. Again, I'm not here to advise you professionally. This is basically educational purposes only, guys. I'll leave the PowerPoint on the Facebook page. Where possible, I have actually sought permissions to use some of the information as part of this backdrop for this episode, and I've quoted and referenced the authors where possible, and I've also sought permission. Some of the information I've used is an open source license, so I'm free to use it as I wish, as long as I'm not gaining commercially from it. So without further ado, guys, that's everything. You guys take care and bye-bye for now.